The silent revenge of a super empath against dismissive avoidant coldness. When people hear the word revenge, they often picture loud confrontations, dramatic exits, or a carefully plotted scheme to get even. But the most powerful revenge is rarely loud. In fact, the quietest form of revenge can be the most devastating. Today, I want to talk about the silent revenge of a super empath against the coldness of a dismissive avoidant partner. This isn't about cruelty or games. It's about power. The power that comes when an empath who once poured endless love into someone finally turns their energy inward, breaks free from the cycle of coldness, and lets their silence become their loudest statement. And make no mistake, when a super empath chooses silence, it shakes the dismissive avoidant to their core. Let's begin by understanding why this dynamic hurts so much in the first place. A super empath is not just empathetic. They are deeply intuitive, nurturing, and emotionally generous. They have the ability to sense another person's wounds, even when that person is hiding behind walls of distance and detachment. The dismissive avoidant, on the other hand, has mastered the art of appearing unbothered. They minimize emotions, retreat into themselves, and often act as if love and closeness are suffocating. This creates a painful loop. The empath keeps giving more in hopes of melting the ice, while the avoidant grows colder, protecting themselves from intimacy. To the empath, this feels like rejection. To the avoidant, it feels like survival. But eventually, even the most selfless super empath reaches a breaking point. The silent revenge begins at that breaking point, not in anger, but in clarity. For so long, the empath has tried to explain, to fix, to heal, to prove their worth. But one day they realize something life-changing. No amount of love can make an avoidant love them the way they need. No amount of patience can force intimacy where fear rules. And instead of chasing, begging, or fighting, they do something far more radical. They withdraw their energy. They go silent. They stop explaining themselves. They stop offering comfort. They stop carrying the weight of both hearts. And for an avoidant who has grown used to the empath's warmth, this silence is earth-shattering. You see, dismissive avoidants often pride themselves on being independent and detached. They believe they can live without deep connection, without emotional closeness. But that belief is tested when the super empath goes quiet. Because despite their walls, avoidants do grow accustomed to the presence of someone who loves them unconditionally. They may not show it, but they depend on that steady stream of validation, affection, and understanding. When that stream dries up, they're forced to face the emptiness of their own isolation. The empath doesn't need to say a single word. The absence speaks louder than any argument ever could. Now here's where the true revenge lies. The empath doesn't just go silent to punish the avoidant. They go silent to heal. Their silence is not a weapon. It's a boundary. It's a declaration that their worth will no longer be measured by how much pain they can endure. The empath begins to redirect their energy inward. Instead of constantly scanning their partner's moods, they tune into their own. Instead of waiting for scraps of affection, they start giving themselves what they deserve: love, respect, and care. The avoidant might see this as abandonment, but in reality, it's liberation. The empath finally realizes that their power was never in fixing others. It was in choosing themselves. And here's the paradox that makes this silence so devastating. While the empath flourishes, the avoidant begins to feel the cracks in their armor. At first, they might tell themselves they don't care. They'll bury themselves in distractions, in work, in casual flings, or in solitude. But deep down, they'll notice the absence. The small messages that no longer come. The gentle check-ins that no longer arrive. The warmth that no longer fills the room. They may not admit it, but the silence eats at them. For the first time, they're not the ones withdrawing. The empath is. And this reversal of roles unsettles them more than they ever expected. It's important to understand why silence affects a dismissive avoidant so deeply. They're used to controlling the pace of closeness and distance. They pull back, others chase. They create space, others fill it. But when a super empath decides not to chase, the avoidant loses control of the dynamic. They're forced to confront the truth. Their coldness doesn't push the empath to try harder anymore. It pushes them away. That realization is where the avoidant begins to feel regret. Not because they suddenly learn how to love, but because they realize they've lost someone who loved them beyond measure. Now, let's talk about how the empath experiences this transformation. At first, the silence may feel strange. They may be tempted to reach out, to explain, to fall back into the old cycle. But as days turn into weeks, something incredible happens. The empath begins to feel lighter. They notice their energy returning. They laugh again, sleep better, dream bigger. They begin to see that their identity was never supposed to be defined by how much love they could squeeze into someone who resisted it. Their silence becomes a mirror reflecting their true strength. And that strength becomes the sweetest revenge, not because it hurts the avoidant, but because it frees the empath. The avoidant, on the other hand, may experience delayed regret. At first, they may rationalize the loss, telling themselves they never needed the empath anyway. But time has a way of stripping down those defenses. Months later, when they feel a pang of loneliness or a moment of vulnerability, they'll remember the super empath. They'll remember the way they were understood without words, loved without conditions, and cared for without demands. And in that moment, they'll realize what they lost. But by then, the empath has moved on. That's the true silent revenge. The empath is no longer waiting. The beauty of this silent revenge is that it doesn't come from spite. It comes from evolution. The empath doesn't seek to destroy the avoidant, but to reclaim their own life. And ironically, that reclamation is what unsettles the avoidant most. They expect tears, anger, and endless attempts to repair the bond. What they don't expect is indifference. They don't expect the empath to smile again without them, to thrive in new connections, to glow with self-love. That glow is louder than any revenge plot could ever be. Let's also acknowledge the spiritual dimension of this transformation. Super empaths often have a higher sense of purpose. They're not here just to be lovers. They're here to awaken others, to reflect back truths, to heal and to grow. When they break free from the avoidant cycle, they often rise to a new level of consciousness. They realize their empathy is a gift, not a curse. They learn to guard it, to channel it, to share it with those who can truly receive it. And in doing so, they step into a power so radiant that even the coldest avoidant can feel its absence. So, what does the silent revenge of a super empath look like in the real world? It looks like not answering the late-night text. It looks like not explaining yourself anymore. It looks like smiling at your reflection and realizing you're enough. It looks like building a life so rich that you no longer crave scraps of affection. It looks like moving forward with dignity, while the avoidant is left wondering how someone they thought would never leave them managed to vanish without a sound. That's the revenge. Not bitterness, not cruelty, but silence filled with self-respect. And here's the final truth. The empath's silence doesn't just punish the avoidant, it protects the empath. Because at the end of the day, revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you gave away too freely. It's about showing yourself the love you once begged for. It's about realizing that the coldness of an avoidant says nothing about your worth and everything about their fear. The super empath doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to chase, doesn't need to prove anything. Their silence says it all. I loved you, I gave you my best, and now I choose me. So if you're a super empath who has faced the coldness of a dismissive avoidant, remember this. Your greatest revenge is not in trying to change them, but in changing yourself. Your silence, your strength, and your self-love are the ultimate response. And when you rise above, you won't just heal, you'll shine so brightly that even the avoidant who once dismissed you will feel the weight of what they lost. That, my friends, is the silent revenge of a super empath.